Groove Builders, welcome to the workbench. We have our Metal Earth Revolver in some really awesome Wild West packaging. And I gotta say, this model looks really cool with all of its detail and of course coloring. I wonder how it's all gonna come together though. Let's go ahead and take a look at the back. On the back we get a good look at our finished model, followed by a difficulty rating here of just over medium. Then just below we have some instructions on how to build our model, and on the right here we have a QR code which we can scan to get a 360 look at our model while we're building. This comes in handy when we're adding little bits of detail onto our build, or also trying to see how those difficult parts are shaped. Finally, at the bottom we get a good look at some other models in the series, and you better believe we're going to be building these. Alright Groovers, let's go ahead and open up our package. We have our instructions, and we have our metal. There's definitely a lot of detail here with all the color and of course etched detail, but I will say the color looks a little bit different than it did on the box. I wonder how this is going to look when it's all together. I guess there's only one way to find out. And with our cutters away, we have all of our parts needed for that first page. Now the first thing we're going to be doing is building the stand for our revolver. So we're going to grab part 1 here, and very carefully we're going to bend the edges around. I'm going to use the inside of my tweezers here to do that, because I really want a nice even bend. You want your stand to look nice. And you may have noticed there I accidentally bent that piece. Don't do that. That was silly. I didn't see that I was bending that. You know, I really should have just used pliers, because that would have been a really easy solution to that problem, and I wouldn't have had that little bend I just did there. Okay, now with that done, bend this guy down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this metal here, but I'm going to use the inside right here to get the right shaping, if you will. And we're going to start bending right where that little crease is, and then we're going to say, hey, you know what, you're not going that way, you're actually going to go this way. And that will cause the piece to start warping the way you want it to be. But notice I'm doing this in multiple stages, I'm not rushing it. Okay. Same with this side here. Get it in decent shape, and again I'm using the edges, if you will, to get a decent shape before I actually commit to the one I want. That was actually a little harder than I was expecting to get the proper shaping, and the reason for that is because the metal has a really thick coating of paint on it. Not a complaint, but it does make it a little bit harder than you might be expecting to shape those pieces properly. Let's bend this down. Okay. The big thing is getting that first bend correct, and then you can work out the other pieces. You won't have a sharp bend there. Okay, that's our first piece bent. Now we can move on to our second piece. With this one here, we're going to do it a little bit differently than what we did with the first one. Rather than bend the edges here first, we're going to do these, and I think it'll be a lot easier to be able to get this shaped, 1, nicer, and 2, make it a little easier for us to be able to get the tabs into the insertion holes. Apparently I can't talk today. There we go. Again, bring her in. I'm doing a serious bend here, and then we're going to follow her out. Now you could do, I have seen people do it in like one big bend. You could do it that way. I personally don't recommend doing it that way. I really do recommend doing multiple bends to get the proper shape. It just makes it look nicer. It does take more time though. Let's go ahead and start bending these guys now. Again, just pushing that right into the center of my tweezers, and then I'm bending it. There we go. That actually went in a lot easier than the first one did. It's probably the secret right there, is to form the fronts first, front and back, and then do the sides. I'm going to use my pliers. I wasn't going to do it, but now I'm going to do it, just to make my life a little easier. Now, if you're wondering what kind of pliers I'm using, these are just Mastercraft pliers, but I have taken all of the grippies on the inside off, and the reason for that, the serrated edges on the inside, the reason for that is for obvious reasons. I don't want the paint to come off, and I don't want my finishes to be ruined on my models. So if you don't want that and you want to mod your pliers a little bit, just take out the insides with a grinder, all good to go. Don't have a grinder? Sandpaper. Just take a heck of a lot longer. Solutions. Okay, there's part number 2. Now we're going to grab 3 and 4. It's this guy right here. This is part number 3, and this right here is part 4. Now with part 4, we're going to grab these little tabs right here and just pull them back. Just like that. Okay. Now the non-engraved side goes on the inside. I know that may sound obvious. You know, the more I'm looking at this revolver, and especially looking at pieces 3 and 4 here, I'm noticing that these are actually supposed to be brass. I guess I didn't want to include that brass sheet inside, but it's kind of a bummer. This paint is very much not shiny at all. It's like a weird, kind of like pukey yellow color. It's weird, actually. It's not a horrible color, but it's not a color I would ever choose for a gun mount. All finished up with that piece right there. Now we're going to add this onto our stand, and we're going to actually connect our stand together. I want to hide my tabs as much as possible. So I'm going to bend these guys down, just like that. And I'm also going to bend this in. Now, this will be entertaining to see how this all goes down. I feel like I'm going to have to bend these out temporarily and then bend them back in and then just kind of work out the centers. Let's see how it goes. You just want to be mean. That's what that is. I understand. I understand. You don't feel wanted, and I understand why you don't feel that way. I mean, you're the one tab that didn't get exactly what they wanted. So let me just bend you like that. Now you may not have seen that on camera, but essentially what I just did there was I grabbed the tab and literally placed it into the insertion hole. You gotta do what you gotta do sometimes here, guys. I want a better securement than these tweezers, so I'm gonna use my tab bending tool. This guy right here. This just allows me to get really close to the tabs. It allows me to really push on them to get as much of the tab as possible with inside the tool. And it makes me a really good securement too. Now these side ones here, I'm actually going to use the tweezers on just because they're easier. Not bad. Tabs are hidden. Can't see nothing. I mean, there's not a seam there, right? Okay, let's add this little guy on here. Same thing here. I want to make sure I get the best connection. So I'm actually going to use my tab securement tool, pressing on both sides. And I'm going to turn opposite. So that was left. This is right. No wobbles, kids. No wobbles. Pretty sweet. Okay, that is our stand completely built. Now we got to move on to actually building the revolver. In my opinion, the best part. We start off with part number 5 right here. And look, we have some more detail that we actually need to shape. And I think it's going to be best here to use this part to do that. So let's start like we did last time. Bend this here. I'm actually going to use my fingers here to kind of help me out. And it looks like we get pretty serious right here. So, there we go. I don't want to bend this too much. You be careful when you're bending that. I'm just going to finish it out a little bit. I don't like the gaps I have. I thought I bent that better. Boo-hoo for me. I'm using my tool here to kind of round off that edge at the bottom to get a nice little finish. I really do want my revolver to look nice. I don't know about any of you out there, but I read the Dark Tower series this last year and really enjoyed it. It's probably one of Stephen King's best work, in my opinion. And I've read a lot of Stephen King books. I got into Audible about 3 years ago, actually, around the time I started this channel. And I've read through a ton of his catalog. And yeah, the Dark Tower series, by far, one of his best works. And this revolver here reminds me of the one of the main characters in the story named Roland. He has these really awesome hand cannons, if you will, from Gilead. It's his home. He's a gunslinger, kind of like a cowboy, if you're not familiar with the series. Really cool stuff. All right, now with part number 5 there kind of formed, we're going to add a few more pieces to it. These guys are a little bit smaller. This is part 6. Making sure that we take into account which side has the paint and which side doesn't. This side here has the paint, of course. So we're going to grab that, going right to the edge. Same thing with the other side. Really hard to get that on camera. So now with this piece bent, I can take it and put it onto 5. Now with this kind of piece, I'm going to use some smaller tweezers. These smaller tweezers help me get the tab where I need it to go. There we go. These look like really cool rivets inside the gun. Just gives it a really nice texture and some really cool details. Let's grab the other little bugger here. I mean, that is a tiny little piece. Not the tiniest we've built with, but definitely a tiny piece. I'm not dropping it, right? And that's how we know. When I'm dropping pieces left, right, and center, that's when... Well, I kind of ate my words there, didn't I? Oh, I found it. Okay, another thing too, this mat, I love it. It looks cool and all, but man, is it hard to find pieces on sometimes, especially when they're tiny like this. Okay, let's not have the same problem as we did last time. That's what happens when you make comments like that, silly goose. Really in there, yeah? Okay, we're good. We are good. Those two little rivets are nice and secured now. We can move on to the next piece here, which is part 7. This is just a tiny little square, pretty easy thing to do. It is just too big for my tweezers though, so I'm gonna have to be a little careful. I'm just kind of making a diamond a little bit, and then I'm pressing on the opposite ends of the diamond to get a nice shape. Okay, and with part 7 finished, making sure that this little part here is on the bottom, we're gonna attach it onto part 5. Again, I should have maybe done this beforehand. Some of this detail is actually a little bit easier to install maybe prior. I could maybe see how this one piece might not work, but some of the other ones, like the little bolts, you could have done that before bending this piece easily. No wiggling, no spacing, looking pretty good, looking pretty good. Okay, now we're gonna bend this little part here on part 5. We're gonna do this, bring her down. And this little back piece now is going to get lined up with that back border. Okay. I feel like this edge here is getting in my way, so I'm going to push a little bit on the outside. There we go. All right. Lift uppy and pushy. Haha, gotcha. Okay, that's part 5 all complete. Now we can move on to part 8. Okay, and with part 8, we're doing the same thing we did before there with part number 7. We're actually going to create a square. And yes, this of course is still very much too thick for my tweezers. So we're going to need some creativeness in order to be able to get this done correctly. Okay, not easier on myself. I think I have a tool for this though that will make life a little easier for me. Let me see here. I haven't used you in quite a long time. Let's give you a go and see how well you can get this done for me. Oh yeah, that's perfect. This is a great tool for this. Great tool for this right here. All I'm doing is going right to the edge there, and I'm just pressing. And that gives me a really nice square. Look at that. Now part 8, of course, gets attached to that piece we just bent. And I was wondering if this was going to be a little hard. And I think it's going to be. Yeah, I think this is going to be complicated. Just make sure that little tab here is at the top, of course. Now, if you don't have this tool at home, doing this would have been actually very hard. I really do recommend maybe installing this piece first on here and then securing it down. Also, having a bit of a lever will probably be a lot easier too, just FYI. Okay, with part 8 installed, now we can move on to just folding this down. And this might be a little bit tricky because all of our edges now are going to need to be lined up. You can use some tweezers to help you with that. There we go. That actually went really well. Cool. All right. That looks neat, and it's all folded and connected together. But something is telling me that we're going to have to do a lot more connecting here, especially with part 10. And part 10 is formed very, very interestingly. Let's take a look at it together. Now, just taking a quick little look at this, this has to connect. Now, this is the non-engraved side. You can see how it has a little area here where it's supposed to be flat. That will be flat. So down here, we're just going to grab it right now, and we're going to just let it know what's happening. You, sir, are going to be bent. And now this guy up here, same thing. I'm going to do the same thing here. Just going to bend it like that a little bit. And I'm also going to use tab bending tool to try to get a nice little rounded edge to see if that will help me get the shape I need. Okay. Now that I have that, let's see how well I did with my estimate. Probably wasn't radical enough. Ooh. Okay. That actually worked out extremely well. Really well. Wow. Okay. Well, okay. All right. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to connect the bottom tabs first, like it says on the instructions. I was just making sure that the piece was going to fit. I'm just pushing on the center, and that's going to help me actually form this piece a lot better. Now I'm going to bend this down a little bit, and I'm going to start working on getting these tabs back and secured because we know that we have the proper angle. Okay. I'm not super satisfied with actually how this looks right now, but I know that we're going to be using another piece to kind of help me form this right here. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of work our way to that. And what I'm going to do is just secure these tabs in the best way that I can. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. All right. Now part 10 is officially attached. We can move on to part 11. Now this is just like before. We're forming the same way, but before we actually do the barrels, we're going to add a whole bunch of detail on first to make our lives a little bit easier. This is part 12, a little tiny bugger. And I'm going to bend the tab first just a little bit before I actually bend the main piece. And that's because this is an aiming reticule. Might be a little hard to see on camera. I have a burr there. Cool. That little nub is added. Now we get to put some more of those little back little rivets in. These little guys here. You're not going to trick me. I already made fun of you before saying that you weren't really that tiny, and well, I almost lost one of you. Not again. Okay, awesome. Both those rivets are now on. We can put the little boxes on the back, and that's part 13 here. Let's take a quick little look at it. These ones are pretty easy. Just little side bends here, either side. Bend these little tabs down. A little tab down. Cool. There's one box done. Boxes are here. Let's place them on to our revolver. These are really straightforward, pretty easy to do. There we go, both of our boxes on. And you know what? I just realized I didn't put on part number 9 to part 8. So we're going to go back and do that right now. This to make things really nice and easy for everybody out there. Okay? What I'm going to do is rather than doing what they do, which is recommend actually folding this piece up and then doing everything, we're not going to do that. We are actually going to attach this on first and then bend it around. And that's because we want our life to go a lot easier than the way these people are trying to make us do this. Again, the important thing here is to make sure that you have a flat, secure piece. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to rest it as best I can. Okay? And then I'm going to take this top part here and I'm going to secure it as flushly as possible. And that's how we get really nice things done. This last piece, you don't bend all the way. See how I did that? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to bend this guy a little bit more than I should. And when I fold her in, that tab will just basically go right in. Look at that. So easy. Bend that down and then just push it in to make it flush. Not the most straight thing in the world. Again, I think once everything comes together, this whole thing will kind of, well, I think we'll kind of even out a little bit. Let's put this down now and start forming this guy right here. Now, like I've said before, this is something that can be a little tricky. You want to take your time with it. If you mess this part up, you get scratches on here, it's going to be super noticeable. Now I've said that, I've jinxed myself, and watch me scratch the crap out of this thing. How do I want to do this? With pliers. Let's get pliers. Go right to the middle here. And I'm doing multiple bends. Because again, I really want to make sure I get a good finish on this. Maybe what I should have done is actually grab from here. Do that from the other side as well. I'm going to do what I just did there. I like that method of bending better. That worked way better. So what I did there is I went right here and I bent down. And I'm actually bending as one big piece. And once I get to the angle that I want, I then leave that strip and move on to the next one. So for instance, I like where that one kind of is. I want to actually bend a little bit more. Okay, next one. Okay, now that last one here is where we kind of put a little bit more emphasis on. Now I should have done that beforehand. So now I'm going to have to travel and I'm going to have to try to straighten this out. Now I'm actually going to keep these tabs on the outside and I'm going to see if I can get this to bend a little bit more for me in the way that I want it to. I don't like the shape of it right now. I'm going to have to form it out a little bit more. And that's going to require a little bit of love. See how that's not really cylindrical? I know it's not supposed to be, but we want it looking better than that. And that was because I didn't follow through with that first bit. So what I would recommend to do this better than the way that I did it would be, I would recommend doing what I did on the second side here, which you can see is actually significantly better bent than the other side. Grab this whole piece, bend it as one, and work your way down and slowly stop bending the on the perforated bend lines as you make your way down. It makes it a lot more uniform, a lot better than what I have right now. I can work this out. It'll take some time, but again, save yourself the struggle, bend it a little bit differently, and you'll have a good little piece. Now, let me just correct this up a little bit and we'll continue on. Okay, I think after a little bit of shaping, I kind of like where this went. Again, avoid yourself the trouble. Don't do what I did there. Make your life a lot easier. Just think a little bit ahead, use it as one solid piece, and you'll be able to do this a lot easier. Alright, now that we've connected everything here and we have it properly shaped, we can actually add it on to that assembly that we built earlier. And this comes back to shaping that part 10 that I was talking about. That's going to be a little tricky, as you can see how that goes. Now it's very important that we actually follow the instructions here. You'll see that it tells us to connect the center first, following way back, and then the last one at the tips here. So let's do that. There's probably a really good reason for it too. Part 5, there we go. My one side. There we go, second side. Once you get the first ones lined up, it should be pretty easy to get the other ones in there. This little front piece here, I'm just actually going to press the tabs down and then I'm going to work it in, and that should mean this piece here is a little flatter. That actually looks really good. My edges are really sharp. That looks really awesome. Let's work on that little front muzzle now with part 14. Now you'll notice with part 14 here, you have all these little tiny bits of metal to bend. It's very important to make this part look nice, to make sure that all of those edges match up. I know I've said that quite a bit, but I really can't understate this at this point. All these little bits of metal here, if they aren't bent exactly right, will stand out at the end. There's my first one. And now I'm going to repeat the process. You could try rolling this piece, but I feel that doing that would compromise you and possibly put you in a situation where you might find yourself overbending this piece. And the only reason why I say that is because there's a little crease just behind all these little tiny pieces. Alright, now let's grab part 15 here and place her on. Now these ones here are bent inwards, so I'm going to bend them towards the hole, if you will, in the center. And now we can attach to the front part of our barrel. Okay, these are painted, so I'm actually going to push them down to try to hide them better. It will make for a kind of the greatest connection, but it might allow me to hide the tabs better. Actually, okay, so what I do is I pop the one tab out there from the bottom, and I'm going to push it in, and maybe that will make it look better, because I don't like the look of this at all. Like that end actually ruins it for me. There we go. Now let's push this tab in. Okay, that actually worked. Worked really well. So one thing you can do if you want to hide the tabs here is you can pop open the little side panel here, or leave the top and the bottom one open. And that way, when you attach it onto the main barrel here, you can hide those tabs inside of the, what is this, part 14 here. Let's see if I can do it with the top part here too. And then we'll move on to, of course, getting more parts. Okay, part 14 is looking pretty smart now. It did move it forward a little bit, but it's really not that noticeable, and it looks a lot better than it did before. Okay, let's move on to our next page, and with that, we need more parts. And there we go. We have all of our parts needed for page 3. And if you're following along with me at home and you're doing exactly what I'm doing here, just make sure you have the proper spacing between your pieces. You don't want to accidentally mix some of these up because they are sensitive to their shapes, especially with the handles down here. Okay, let's start with part 16 right here. This is our chamber of our revolver. Our drum, actually, I should say, not chamber. It's incorrect terminology. And let's also grab part 17 here. Now, this is the engraved side here, and this is my engraved side. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use Animate Oranges tool here, just to kind of give me a start for a nice wraparound. Nice little shaping. There we go. And now I'm going to use my other tool here to kind of help me get the rest of that. And I'm going to roll it just like that. I find if you roll the pieces across your tools, especially something like this, which is a little bit smaller than the actual piece, you get a really nice finish. And the more you roll it, the better the finish is. Just make sure to go all the way around or you'll accidentally overshape it. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now these are all secured with a nice twist. There we go. Now with that complete, we can move on to part 18. Now these little guys here are a little bit tinier than this one, and I'm going to go ahead and just use my mandrel here to get the proper size. Now I always start bigger and then work my way down to the proper size. That way I can ensure that every piece of the metal is bent. Sometimes if you just go to a small size, you actually miss parts of the metal and it kind of looks like a square or a teardrop. You don't want to have that, especially with these guys. So take a little bit of time you need, and don't forget to roll your piece. There we go. Now with that, I'm not going to close the caps just yet. I'm going to wait, and the reason for that, it just makes it a lot easier for me to be able to install them where I need to. I can grab that little top cap here, install it, and then secure it. All right, let's move on to our next piece here. I got 6 of these to do. Again, starting big, and then working my way down the mandrel here. If you don't have one of these at home, you could also use your tweezers and just slowly go around and bend the metal into shape. You could also use the cap at the top to help you form it correctly if you need some kind of reference. Okay, there we go. Now that's 2 done. Let's go ahead and skip to where they're all finished and we're moving on to our next piece. Okay, and there is our last one. All right, now with these all complete, we can move on to adding them on to our last part here, part 16. And this is going to be a little tricky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of my seams facing the inside. That way you can not see them. Not the best connection there, unfortunately. Let me see if I can make it a little better. That's why sometimes I really do like to use my my tab bending tool, because this guy just really secures things in place. Okay. This paint is really thick. Now you'll notice that some of these have a little bit of a gap, and what I'm going to do is just go around like this, and just by doing that little bit of a bending action, it takes away those gaps. See? Looks really nice. Again, just a little bit of finishing. I typically do that at the very end before I go and attach the piece on to the next one. But just to kind of show you what I am doing as I go, I'm going to tidy those up a little bit so they look nice, just like that. There we go. Looking really nice. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is start forming the next piece here, which has us going with part 19. Okay. What we're doing with this is we're kind of making a hexagonal kind of piece. Not really, but similar to it. You'll notice I'm going right to those edges. Be very careful. This detail can bend very easily. Okay, it wants me to have like a little bit of a rounded edge on either side. So now that I got this right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my tool, and I'm going to push out, and I'm going to try to get an even kind of look there. See how it looks. Push on the one side a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. I want this to even out. Oop, not too much. See what I mean by that? That detail is very easy to bend. So again, I'm going to put my tool in here and help me. That one worked out well. I should have bent the other one like I did with that one. I bent it as I went. I can also use my tweezers here to kind of help me out. Awesome. All right. I'm okay with how this looks. Let's see how it attaches. So what's going to be is part 21 is the reference for this guy here. Let's see. And this is the non-engraved side right here, just for the record, and this is the engraved side. So the engraved side is where this piece gets attached, and the small end goes in here. So I'm going to try to put my tab down. Oops, my tab bent inward as I was kind of pushing. What I realized when I was putting part 19 into part 21 here is that my piece was a little bit too small. So I had to press on the sides a little bit to make it a little bit bigger. And now my tab should fit right in. I overbent that tab just a hair. Don't you hate that when that happens and it gets stuck in that little groove just right before the tab insertion hole? Ah, that's a pain in the butt, but it happens. Boom, and boom. First piece installed. The next one's really easy. It's just a nice little cylinder. So we're going to grab this guy here, making sure that we, of course, fold it on the proper side. And we're just going to use our tool here. Boom. Just like that. And then we're going to go up a little smaller. Roll it around a little bit. There we go. Cool. Now this one gets installed on the bottom. Great. And there is that piece kind of done. You know what? I'm going to fix this because that is very much a sharp bend. And we don't want those. We do not want those. See how quickly that straightened out just with a little bit of love? So you never worry too much. Once things are in place, you can kind of worry about them. You can manipulate things and tie them up a little bit. Just be careful not to accidentally scratch the paint. That's the big thing. There we go. All right, that looks way better than where we started. All right, let's put this down now. and grab part 22. Okay, with part 22 here, we have a really nice cylinder-y shape we got to get. So what I'm going to do is use my doming tool. I'm actually going to use a, what's it called? A fondant tool. Thank you. A fondant tool to try to help me get this here. And this might actually be too big, but I'll use it right now, and then I'll come back and shape. And what I'm doing is I'm just rolling it. And I want to make sure that every part of the metal is getting bent. Again, you want that shaping to be nice, right? So this tool is too big, so I'm going to get a smaller one. Okay. I really do like how that's coming along. Now that I got this really nice shaping here and I like how the metal looks, what I'm going to do is use my doming set to kind of help me out with the final shaping part of it. I just got to find the proper size, and it looks like I found her on the first guess. Ka-ching. It's almost like I'm a pro builder or something around here. I would never call myself a pro builder. That'd be so silly. I'm not really paid to do models yet, I guess. So actually, you know what? I got monetization. I guess I kind of am being paid to do models. That's kind of cool. What I'm noticing is that these are not perfect because there's big chunks of metal that were cut out with this. Unfortunately, I don't think that these sides are ever going to be laser perfect. I'm going to try. Yeah, it won't work because there's just too much of a gap at the top. So there's a design area right there, in my opinion, especially on the top edges here. You won't be able to get the metal to completely form in that way. Okay, well, we got this side bent. Let's move on to the next piece we need to form. These guys right here. Now, this is part 23, and these are bent very specifically. It's important to make sure that the engraved side is actually being indented because it's going to go on the inside of here. So using my little fondant tool, I'm going to use a smaller size. Actually, I'm going to use a bigger size first. And I'm going to just roll her like this. And let's try this one here just a little bit more. I might actually have to bend this a lot more. We're going to find out here. Okay, you want to fight with me? You want to go? I go. Okay, after some reshaping there, I think we're looking pretty good now. Just going to straighten these out a little bit, I think. Now we're going to be attaching this onto part 24. 24 looks like this. Boom. Now 24, what the important thing to do here is make sure everything lines up. And if it doesn't, make sure you go back and form it. You don't want things to be standing out here too much. I'm actually going to use my tab bending tool here, and I'm going to give a nice twist. Just like that. And same with this guy here. Pull her up, give her a nice twist, and this guy I'm actually going to bend downward, just so that he's away from the seam. There we go. That's our first one complete. Now we got to do the other side, which is part 25 and 26. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just skip to where I have this already attached together. Okay, now I know I said it was exactly the same. It's not. It's a little bit different. Actually, it's a little bit simpler than the one before. All we're doing is attaching this on to part 26 here. I really don't like these massive gaps, but I feel like it's a design in the metal and it's something you can't really avoid. That sucks. I'm going to see if I can maybe puff it out a little bit from the inside. Okay, there we go. Now with this attached, we can move on to our next half, which is actually getting a really complicated shape, especially here at the tip of the hammer. We're definitely going to need to use our tweezers in a unique way to get that shaped properly. Okay, let's go ahead and grab part 27 here and begin that shaping process. Butterfingers today. Butterfingers, butterfingers, butterfingers. So it goes like starting like this. Alright, so what I'm doing here is just doing a lot of bends. I tried to go the other way first. That didn't really work out. So I'm going from the bottom this time. And this is going so much better. Again, really need a tight little bend there. There we go. And then we just bring her down. Again, we're using the piece here to help us form this really weird shape. And then we click her in, just like that. Cool. Okay. Now I'm just gonna kind of fill her out a little bit. I'm kind of really big on trying to match everything as best I can. So you'll see me do this like 100 times before I actually secure anything. And I'm actually happy with this. So we're gonna go ahead and start securing the tabs. Unfortunately, these tabs suck. So you won't be able to hide them, or at least I'm not gonna be able to hide them with the current build that I have on this one. So I'm gonna try to work it in so that it looks like part of the design. I'm bending where the paint is, so there's no silver. You don't want that silver showing at all. I'm actually kind of surprised it didn't decide to use like silver and then just use like the laser etching, but I guess it would look too real. Okay, I'm happy with that. That looks actually really good. Now we gotta attach the other piece on. Let's see how it all looks together. Wow, that went in really easy. I guess that's a good sign. We're gonna twist this front tab here, just because I think it looks better twisted. It kind of hides it a little better. Then I'm going to fold this one like this. One of these is definitely tighter than the other, and that's interesting to me. I'm going to have to work this out a little bit once we get everything sorted out. That's really weird. Huh. Like, I almost feel like, I mean, like, I didn't mess this up. I know I didn't. So I guess we're going to find out in a few moments how this all comes together, and we'll see how it looks. All right, now that this is completed, we can put this down and move on to our next step, which actually has us building the drum piece here. I'm gonna roll the piece here. Now you'll notice on the instructions it says you actually don't have to roll the edges on this piece, but I'm going to do that. It makes my life a lot easier, I think. So again, we got everything kind of rolled. Now I'm going to commit to this. Cool. Let's grab another one here. This is going to be the one where we get good connection here. Now I'm going to try to make a lock on this, so my plan is to bend this down, a tab, and then connect her together. Okay. Now I'm not a massive fan of how this looks right now, so I'm going to have to like work it out a little bit. I don't like the way it's circled. I thought I did a good job of kind of making that happen, but I guess that bottom edge didn't get as rounded as I thought I rounded it. There we go. Nice little circle. I think so. Now, what we're going to do next is we are going to attach the drum that we built earlier. This guy right here. And what we're going to do is insert it very carefully. What? That's going to be difficult. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend these guys here in a little bit and then up a little bit. In a little bit and then up a little bit. I'm going about halfway up on the tab for that. In a little bit and then up a little bit. And that should make my life a little easier here. I'm going to grab onto the center and drop her in. I'm going to work on one side first. Oh yeah, that worked way better. Go. Going all the way around here, just pushing my tabs down. All right, that looks cool. Now we're gonna bend these little guys in. It says we don't have to, which is kind of funny, but I mean, we have to now. All right. I think this is gonna be hard once we put it all together because it's already kind of moving a little bit. We'll see how it looks, but I think you're gonna have a little bit of a hard time here. Okay, let's grab part 29 here. The non-engraved side is on the back, and we're placing her in. Now I'm going to try to do my best to make sure that lovely little seams at the bottom, we don't want to see that. And we're going to make sure that these tabs are as straight as possible to make our lives easy. I'm using my thumb to kind of help me give a little bit of back pressure as I push them down so they don't bend too much like I just did that. You know, I'm narrating these things, trying to tell you guys how not to make mistakes, and then I make them as I'm narrating them. It's quite beautiful, really. With our crappy side down, it fit right in there. Look at that. Beautiful. So again, pressing as heavy as we can, twist. Now with these tab tools, you really don't want to do more than a quarter twist. There we go. Now we can go on to our next piece, which is adding that little front part here. There we go. Cool. I think I'm going to be able to do almost all of them except for the top tab. See that top one? You can't really bend it over without exposing the paint. So maybe a twist. But it's actually pretty flush as it is, so it might be... There we go. A little twist. There. I'm happy with that. That looks like, you know, it kind of looks like part of the design almost. Okay, cool. Alright, I like it. The drum looks kind of neat. Now we need to add the backing. This is the part I think is going to look a little weird. I'm going to have to play with it. Wow, this is looking a little bit more of a pain in the butt than I wanted. Okay, I got the top piece in there. I'm going to just secure that in, I think. Alrighty, we got her in there, boys. That was some manipulation, but we did it. Alrighty, now let's fold her in there. Get her nice and attached. You know what? After putting that all together, it actually kind of worked out. Alright, there we go. Fold that like this. Kind of push that down. Again, just go through and kind of recorrect things as you go. You might have to do some more forming at the end to get a nice little finish. That's normal though. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Let's move on to our next piece here, which is just mounting it on. This is part 30. Now, let's see how these all line up. Alright, now with that, we can go ahead and start twisting these. I'm going to twist them alternately. So there's left, and here's right. Left, that. Just make sure it's really nice and pressed down there. Awesome. Okay, I think that lined up pretty nicely. I'm going to do this right here to kind of follow the design. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now we can move on to building the handle. This looks kind of interesting. Now, I've seen a lot of the handles look really kind of wonky on some of the Instagram posts, so I'm going to try my best here to see if I can round this edge and prevent that kind of wonky look that I see so much. And the way I'm going to do that is kind of follow the same pattern that I've done before, which is using that fondant tool to get a nice little finish. So I'm going to use this bigger piece here, and I'm just going to roll it in the center. And yeah, it's going to scuff up the center of this piece, but you're not going to see it, right? Because it's the inside of the handle, so no worries there. But I'm going to do some serious pushing here. I'm going to switch this around, actually. And I'm going to do some serious texturing, if you will. I would hate for everything to go 19 on me right now. Let's do this right here. Okay, so now one thing I'm just realizing about the handle is it's actually telling me to hide these tabs, so I'm going to try doing that. I think that's going to be incredibly hard. But basically you have to really do a serious bend there in order to be able to do this. So here we go, and boom! Just like that. Bring it up. Like that. Awesome. Okay, now I'm going to match this up. And I think that looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to fold this part here down at the top. And I'm going to fold this right here like that. Okay, now if I match this up, alright, I think that looks pretty good. Now we can move on to our next step, which has us putting a whole bunch of bolts onto part 32. It's very much the same thing we've done before. Grab these little guys here, make sure we hold on to them tight, and of course go to each side, bending the tabs down 90 degrees. Whoop, whoop. Okay, whoop. Falling again. Listen here, Mr. Tab. You're going in whether you like it or not. I'm sorry if you don't agree, but there's things that are happening. See? No choice. Just gonna press these guys in here, making them nice and secure. Okay. Cool. There's part 32 all finished up. And now we're going to insert this into that little sandalwood grip we just made. I'm going to attach the bottom first and then work my way to the back one. Oh boy. Okay. There we go. Okay, I took a little bit of force, but once you put a little force in there, you can get her done. I'm actually going to grab it from this side here and use it like that. There we go. Pew, pew, pew. Push this down a little bit here. See, there's some parts of this, there's going to be gaps. You can't do anything about it. That sucks. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, though, like when it comes to that, I guess. I don't know. All right, this looks good for right now. Let's move on to the next step, part 33. Same kind of things we did before. We're going to form out the sandal grip the same way we did the other one here. We're going to give it some texture by making it look realistic. Same thing as before. We're going to be adding rivets on to part 34 here. These little buggers. I know a lot of people out there really do like to secure their tabs with a fold, and I understand. It makes it more secure. I get it. But I do also like twisting the tabs. I do find that sometimes that can provide a really secure connection, depending on, of course, like what that piece is. If it's like structural integrity and you don't have a flat piece supporting that tie down, then I understand. You really do want to fold it just to get some good strength to that hole. But if you're just installing something like a piece of detail like this, a twist is fine. As long as it doesn't get in the way of other detail behind it. That's when pain in the butts happen. You may have noticed over the last couple of build videos that my camera angle has changed from over top, and that's because I thought of a new way of doing my over the top view, and I think it provides me a better, more secure view, and I hope to soon have multiple camera angles involved to keep you guys entertained at home. I know that a lot of you are watching this to get instructions, especially the longer builds, and I want to be able to help you with that. There we go. All done. Now let's add this on to the sandal grip, just like we did with the last one. And remember, we're going to insert the front first, and then we're going to put a little bit of pressure and keep pressing, and it will pop right back in there. Look at that. Awesome. And twist. All right. There you go. Awesome. This is coming together really well now. We got to put the back on, which is the part 35. The thing about this piece right here is that we're going to have to be very tactical in the way that we bend it. We want the lower piece here with the little tab to be on the bottom. And when we're installing it into these tabs, we're trying to hide the tabs. So we're really going to have to make these pretty much almost 90 degrees down, if not completely 90. You might have to go a little bit more than 90 degrees, depending on how this angle of the grips go. So I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to kind of slowly bend the metal the way I want to. Give it a little bit of form. Okay. And now with the other side here, I'm going to bring it in. Ooh, now, that's not the tricky part. The tricky part's actually securing tabs. If I get one on each side done, I'm going to be a pretty happy man. Alright, how do I hold this without it breaking apart? Oh, it broke. Damn it. I mean, shoot a monkey. Cool. That is awesome. That came out way better than I thought it would, and I'm really happy with that. That looks really cool. Okay, now we can add the top piece here, which is the last piece of the page, part 36. If I can pick it up, part 36. There we go. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to bend it over my doming set, and that will give me the shape I want, because it tells me it has to be a little bit rounded, and that was probably too much rounding, but we're going to find out in a moment. I'm going to push these tabs in on either side. Now once these guys are on there, we're going to bend them down, and secure them tightly. There you go. All right, really cool. Okay, there's that piece added, and with everything now done, we need more parts. And there we have it, all of our pieces needed to build our Wild West revolver. Now we're working on the trigger, which is part 38. It's right here. This is pretty simple, actually. All we gotta do is just fold it just like this. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna bend this, but again, we're gonna do several bends. And I'm gonna do that as I go down the trigger, like that. Bringing her in. And I'm going to use my more detailed tweezers to kind of help me get that bend that I want. Okay, there we go. Cool. Little trigger, kind of neat. Now we're going to add this onto part 37 here. Now with part 37, we're making sure this is the non-engraved side here. What we're going to do is we're going to fold this part right here up. This is a little back guy. Just like that. Boom. Oh. A little harder to bend than I thought. Okay. Go. I should have used my bigger tweezers. And now that we've done that, we're going to use doming set tool here. And we're going to buff this out a little. Like that. Okay. That should be just enough. And now that we have that, we can bend this like this. Okay. There we go. That's our piece fully formed, I think. Now we can add the trigger in. It's going to be one of those pieces where I'm going to have to be very much careful until it's secured. Now, these are all secured with a twist, so that makes life a little easier. All right, I think that looks pretty good now. Let's put that down. We're going to start forming part 39. Now, part 39 is a little tricky, and that's because the parts are so thin. I do see that I have a little bit of burrs here on this still, so I'm going to take that out. That's ugly. What is going on? I think my clippers might need to be, might need to get some new ones. I bought these thinking that they were going to be better. I know it's safe for plastic, but I mean, these should have been way better than this. Oh well, live and learn. I'm always in the quest for new tools to test and try out, see what works, what doesn't work. Okay, now getting these tabs in here is going to be a little tricky. It's telling me it wants me to actually put them on the inside. Let's see if that works. Getting the tab into the insertion hole is proving to be kind of tricky here. There we go. Okay, here's the one. Same thing with the back one here. Now, I'm actually not going to hide these ones. I'm going to look at the other way and see how it looks. Because I think you can actually do it the other way and it looks better because the tabs are actually painted. If they weren't painted, then I would understand, but whew, okay. Sometimes when my tabs are not going to be my friend like this, I slightly bend the tab to the left or right just to make it easier for me to get it in like that. And then when I go to bend the tab, I'll straighten it back out. There we go. I think I got the trigger the way I want it to be. I actually like it better not trying to hide the tabs. I'm going to leave it this way just because it's unique, and also I think the metal's a little bit more fragile than what we're used to dealing with, even though it does feel like your typical Metal Earth metal. I really don't want to put too much stress on it. So I'm going to leave it the way it is right now, and now I'm going to attach it onto our piece we just built here. This is part 40. I'm just letting you know that it might have been better to go the other way about this. I almost did it the wrong way too. Pay attention to what you're doing. I'm going to bend this tab down a little bit, and that should make my life a little bit easier. Ooh, wrong one again. Something like this. All right, cool. Now with our trigger assembled, we can attach it to the lower part of our gun. And this is where things get entertaining, because we're going to be adding all of our pieces together here at this point, and this is make or break time. Drum. Okay. We're going to start with the left side here. Sometimes you need smaller tweezers to start the bend, and your bigger ones to finish it, like I just did there. Same thing with this side here. Now I'm going to push it in there, get that nice little form. There we go. This guy here needs to be worked out a little bit. I'm not a big fan of this little piece up here at the top. I mean, it's just sitting there. Whatever. All right. I like this. Oh, I'm silly goose. You know what I'm forgetting to do here? I'm forgetting to install part 40. That would be a problem, and that's why I can't do things. I need to be more observant. All right. Now, this is the engraved side. What we're going to do with the engraved side here is we're going to bend it. Okay. Now that we have this done, we can do something even better. We can actually put this onto our gun. Now the trigger mech will go in. Okay, there we go. Kind of neat. With that installed, that was actually a lot easier to install than I thought it would be totally honest with you. Now we can move on to just doing the grip parts here. And once again, we're going to be doing some weird forming. So what I'm going to do to try to help with that is I'm going to use my fondant tool again to give me a hand. Now I'm being very careful with this paint because I don't want it to come off. But I could see how it could very easily come off if I'm not careful here. Now that I got the kind of the right shape, we're going to bend these tabs down like this all the way around, and we're going to insert them into the insertion holes. Now we might have to do a little bit more than a 90-degree bend to be able to get them in. I'm letting you know that now, but that's what we have to do in order to be able to hide these tabs. Man, this is going to take some time to get that in there. Yeah, I said it was going to be a lot of work, and it has been. It's just been a lot of manipulation of the metal back and forth. I've done both pieces now, and I'm just securing this last tab at the bottom. There we go. And now I'm going to fold this back and connect it. Okay, now those are connected. The inner piece here is going to be even more complicated. I'm going to bend these guys essentially 90 degrees back, and I think that these tabs at the back here are going to be dang near impossible to secure, but I guess we'll find out. Now there is a bend, so I'm just going to do this to get like a generic bend, and I'm using my fingers. And also, this might make it easier for me to secure the tabs as I go, because I don't know how I'm going to secure these tabs in the back here. Maybe, you know, part of me kind of wonders why Metal Alert doesn't actually dip the certain pieces, like the tips of these ones in different colors, because, you know, if I'm supposed to be hiding the tabs, I mean, you could just dip them in different color and I wouldn't have to be hiding them like this. This almost seems so silly. I'll be honest with you, I'm bending these tabs up, and I'm not going to fight with it because I don't think that is the way that should have been done that way. The bottom ones I'll hide, but the top ones, they're too near impossible without totally destroying the piece here to secure the way they want you to by hiding the tabs. And I say that as somebody who has built a lot of models. I'm not willing to risk my model on a little tab like that. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it this way, and it will allow me to get the effect that you want, or the effect that I want, and still look really nice. There we go. Pew, pew, pew. Kind of. Now we can add on the little plate here, which is part 44. Let's do that real quickly. All right, now we just put the little gun on here in the front. Ha ha ha! Look at this! This is awesome! Whoa. Red Dead Redemption style. Or even Dark Tower style. I'm Roland of Gilead. That's really cool. You know, this actually just really sits on top of the stand like this. I'm not going to secure it just yet because I want to be able to play with it a little bit more, but just like that. And there we go, the Wild West Revolver.